Okay, we're entering the last part of the crypto bull market, and in this last part of the crypto bull market, the moves tend to be very, very, very aggressive. And there are a lot of people that have come into crypto and they've never experienced these crazy moves. And so because they've never experienced these crazy moves, they don't know how fast and how far prices can actually run. So what I decided to do was I decided to build a model. In fact, I built two models. And I use these models to predict the prices of crypto at the end of the cycle. I use them to predict the prices of Bitcoin, of ETH, of BNB, of SUI, of Solana, and a whole lot of the big coins. Now, the truth is that when the model gave me the answers, and you can see some of the answers here, Bitcoin at 250,000, ETH at $23,000, I really didn't believe the answers. I thought it was a big mistake. But when I analyzed the maths, when I looked deeper into the maths and I broke it down line by line, I actually realized that these predictions were actually extremely possible and maybe even pretty accurate, right? And so what I want to do today is I actually want to show you the math. I want to show you the model. I want to show you the predictions. I want to show you the price of Bitcoin, ETH, Solana, SUI, and BNB. And spoiler alert, when you see the price of SUI at the end, it's absolutely going to shock you. But when you see the math, it's going to be amazing math. So I want to show you the model. I want to show you how I got the numbers, and I want to show you just how high and how quickly we can go that high in the cycle. So yeah, I think it's going to be crazy show. As I said, I didn't really believe the numbers, and I'm not really one for predictions. I don't like making price predictions because I know that they're usually wrong. But when I saw the maths just closed me on this. That's what I want to do. I want to share it with you today. So let's do it. Let's get the show on the road. As I said, I don't really like price predictions. Crazy, because if you make a price prediction, the probability that you're wrong is so much higher than the probability that you're right. But when the price predictions are actually based by maths, and you can follow the maths, and I'll actually even give you the model at the end of it, and you can actually practice with your own maths, then I mean, you can work it out, and you can tell me if you think the assumptions are pretty realistic. And I'm very excited to actually show this to you. Before we do though, guys, just remember, just obliterate the like button. It really helps me get distribution, and we're on a winning streak. Like, we're growing every day, and that's because you guys are here and you guys are smashing the like. So before we actually get into the model, let's actually just look at the markets quickly. So just quickly, I don't want to spend too much time here, but as you can see, the market's consolidating above the long-term trend line, which is very positive. We still need that Bitcoin breakout. And as I said to you, like, it keeps testing this line over here, and we need the Bitcoin breakout. Same story on ETH. We're still waiting for the ETH breakout. It's breaking down this 5-year or 4-year trend line. And it's tapping this, and it's tapped it like 4 or 5 times. So we can kind of assume that at some point it's actually going to break through. Maybe it's not going to be this time, but it's definitely going to break through. If it is going to break through, I think this is a good week for it to happen. There's a big week. And actually in this week, tomorrow is like the biggest day of the week, right? So what's happening tomorrow? We've got a lot of things happening tomorrow. The first thing is we've got the GDP numbers coming out. Then we've got the president's report on crypto. So the president's working group digital asset report has been completed. Big question is whether they're going to talk about the strategic reserve and how they're going to generate the strategic reserve. So that will come out tomorrow. Then after that, we'll be live here. We'll be live on this channel for the FOMC, right? So tomorrow, we've got the big FOMC. I think it's going to be a nothing burger. I must warn you now. I think it's going to be a nothing burger, even though I want you to come and chill and hang out this. I really think it's going to be a nothing burger. And the reason why I think it's going to be a nothing burger is, remember this guy, 𝗪𝗫𝗪, who we call the Fed Whisperer, because he's so close to the Fed. He actually attends the FOMC meetings. So he says, he tweeted this morning, he said, Fed officials expect they will need to resume lowering interest rates eventually, but they just aren't ready to do it this week. And he says the questions that are dividing them are, they need to see first, they're waiting for the tariffs. They're talking about officials when paused. The Fed was united when officials paused rate cuts this year after tariffs raised renewed fear for inflation. And now they want to see what the effects of it are. So we're probably not getting an interest rate cut this week. Spoiler alert, I don't think it's actually going to happen. But and you can see the probability is actually showing there's a 2.1% chance of a rate cut tomorrow. So I don't actually think it's going to happen. But nonetheless, we will be here. We'll be bringing you crypto love and crypto wisdom half an hour before 𝗲𝗏 speaks. We'll be here. We'll be bringing you crypto love and crypto wisdom, and we'll be breaking it all down. All right, that's that. Let's talk about the price prediction. So as I say, disclaimer, I don't like doing price predictions. The reason why I don't like doing price predictions is you're more often than right. More often you're going to be wrong than you're going to be right. The probabilities are stacked against you. Also, most price predictions actually aren't based on maths. So what I did was I actually made a model. I sat down and actually made a model. I said, okay, look, I want to build a price prediction that's based on maths. I did that. I fed the model into an AI. The AI generated a spreadsheet for me, and now we've got price predictions. So I want to show you where these price predictions actually came from. And as I said, I made two models. There isn't only one model. It's this model over here, and then there's another model over here. And the reason why I made two models is because the one double checks the other, the one tests the other. And I want to show you the maths behind each one of these models, and I want to show you how they actually, freakishly enough, actually came in and landed up at exactly the same place. So to start off with, I used Bitcoin as the base for the pricing models, because I needed to start somewhere to get some data. I needed to start somewhere. And effectively what I said is, look, let's assume that Bitcoin is going to go to $250,000 this cycle. And we can adjust this number later. I'll leave you the spreadsheet after the show. I'll post after the show. I'll post a link to the spreadsheet below and you guys can have a look at it. But let's assume that Bitcoin actually gets to, let's actually make this a slightly bigger. Let's assume that Bitcoin actually gets to $250,000 this weekend, this cycle, right? That would give Bitcoin, if you take 20 million Bitcoin outstanding, that would give Bitcoin a $5 trillion market cap. Now, just to give you guys some perspective, if we look at Bitcoin's market cap right now, which I'll show you in a second, here it is. So if you look at Bitcoin's market cap right now, market cap's about $2.3 trillion. We're at $250,000, assuming that 20 million coins have already been mined at the end of the cycle. We're talking about a market cap of $5 trillion. Then I moved on to the Bitcoin dominance chart. And I said, look, I think personally that the Bitcoin dominance this cycle should drop way below where it was in the last cycle. And the reason why I said that was because I think that altcoins are going to become more relevant as this ecosystem actually progresses. And therefore, the Bitcoin dominance is not going to be as relevant as it's been in last cycles. With that said, though, what I wanted to do was I actually wanted to create a conservative price. So the price prediction that I'm actually going to give you is rather conservative. And so what I said was, I said, look, what if Bitcoin doesn't break, if a dominance doesn't break below the previous cycle? In other words, altcoins don't grow relative to Bitcoin. Let's just say that they follow this trend line, right? So if you say like, this is a trend line, and let's just say that we go down and we actually touch this trend line over here. If that happens, I made an assumption that Bitcoin dominance at the end of the cycle will be 40%. Now, bear in mind that in previous cycles, the Bitcoin dominance actually went below 40%. It went to 35% here. Here it went to 38%. So I said, look, let's just take a number and let's make the number 40%. If Bitcoin's market cap is $5 trillion, and Bitcoin makes up 40% of the market, that means that at the end of the cycle, we should have a market cap in crypto of $12.5 trillion. If we have a market cap of $12.5 trillion, and bearing in mind that today's market cap is $3.8 trillion, and you can go and check that over here, you can just go to total, and you can see the total. I mean, I pieced these numbers together earlier. This will take a second. I'm not sure why the internet's being so nasty to me. Let's just refresh that. So let's just make an assumption that I'm right here. Total market cap is $3.8 trillion. Total, let's see if we can get that now. So total market cap is $3.8 trillion. That means that the expected move in the market cap from $3.8 trillion to $12.5 trillion is 3.29x. And so what we're saying is that between now and the end of the cycle, the total market cap is going to 3x from here. Now, you may say, well, that sounds crazy, but I'm going to remind you that in the last part of the crypto bull market, this is what the moves look like. This is what the moves feel like. So don't shoot the messenger. I'm just showing you what actually happens here. So hopefully that this is quicker. Okay, you can see the total market cap is $3.86 trillion. So that is the total market. So that shows us that we're expecting the cycle to end when the total market cap hits 12.5 trillion. The market cap today is 3.8 trillion, assuming that Bitcoin doubles more or less from here, but that Bitcoin will add 2.5 trillion and the rest will actually be added by the altcoins. Okay, those are the beginning assumptions that I actually works on. Now let's look at ETH. So if that is the case, what will actually land up happening to ETH? So the first thing I did was I took ETH dominance today. And I said, okay, ETH dominance today, 12%. I think when I made the spreadsheet, it was 11.95. So I think 12% actually works. That is where ETH is today. But what we know about the last part of the bull market is that ETH dominance starts to rise and actually starts to rise quite fast, right? That is what the cycle is actually dominated by, is that ETH starts to become more dominating relative to Bitcoin. And so to get to an assumption, what I said is, look, let's just assume that this downward trending trend line actually flows and that we just get to somewhere around here. And you can see that somewhere around 18%. So what I said is, that's the ETH dominance today. That's the ETH price today, which is 3,800. That's the ETH market cap today, which is $460 million. You can see that if you look at, if you look here and you go to ETH, you can see the total market cap. And I'm using fully diluted market caps because I don't want to be subject to token withdrawals and shenanigans that these guys play. So you see the ETH market cap, $460 billion. Okay, cool. Then I said, what will ETH dominance be by the end of the cycle? As I showed you, I said 17.5%. And actually, if you want, we can even be a bit more accurate. We can say 18%. So let's say that the ETH dominance becomes 18%. What will that actually do to the ETH price? Well, what it'll do is it'll make ETH have a market cap of 2.25 trillion by the end of the cycle. How did I get that number? I said, what is the ETH dominance going to be? 18%. What is the total market cap going to be, which is this number over here? And I said, okay, well then that'll give ETH a valuation of $2.25 trillion by the end of the cycle. Then I said, okay, well, if that's the case, what is the multiple to where we're at now? And it was a 4.89 multiple. And so my conservative case, and I'm assuming that there's no token emissions on ETH. I'm assuming that the ETH burn actually burns any tokens that I emitted. That would give me a conservative price estimate of $18,587 per coin. Okay, cool. That's the conservative price estimate. Then I said, hold on a second. What if ETH actually becomes more relevant and the market cap of ETH actually breaks up above this level over here, above this 18%, which I plotted over here randomly? I said, what if it just gets to where it got to last cycle, which is to 22.5% on the ETH dominance? And if you look at that, what that does is it actually gives you a total, it gives you I said 22.3. That gives you a $2.7 trillion market cap for ETH, which would put ETH where Bitcoin is today. Now, those are the numbers. You can mess around on the spreadsheet. You can change all the assumptions on the spreadsheet. That would be a 6x from here, which puts ETH at 23,000. If you want to be like extremely conservative, then I'll just show you what happens if you want to be extremely conservative. Say that Bitcoin gets to 200,000 this cycle. And I don't think that that's right, but let's just say that it is. And let's say that the Bitcoin dominance is actually 45%. Well, then you get an ETH target of 16,000 in the bullish one and 13,000 in the pessimistic one. You can play with these assumptions as much as you like. So based on a dominance approach, you can see that the ETH price gives me 18,000 conservatively and 23,000 if I use a much more realistic number. Now what I wanted to do was I actually wanted to test this against another model, because one model wasn't actually enough for me, right? So what I did was I took the ETH BTC ratio. So I went to TradingView and I went to ETH BTC. I went to ETH BTC, which is this chart over here. It's being very, very slow today. I don't know why, but let's look at that. And I said, look, this is ETH BTC. This is the ratio of ETH to Bitcoin in this cycle, right? And what I said was, if I look at the current ETH BTC ratio, it was when I did this chart, it was on 0.32, which means that one Bitcoin bought you, so the ratio of the Bitcoin price to the ETH price is 0.032, which is, it is 3,857 divided by 119,000. That gives you just under 3%. Okay, cool. Then I said, okay, what was the last cycle high? In other words, what was the last cycle high in Bitcoin ETH? And that was like 0.089. So if ETH breaks up above that and goes back to its highs against Bitcoin of the previous cycle of 2021, what will that actually yield me? So I said, look, if I think the price of Bitcoin is going to be 250,000. Then I did two things. I said, okay, well, let's assume that it doesn't get to last cycle's high. Let's assume that it just goes to 0.045, which is the top of this channel. It's the top of this trend line. It goes somewhere to 0.045. What would then be the price of ETH? And the number I got was 11,000, right? Which is not that different from the numbers that I was getting here when I was messing around with the numbers when I went on the very conservative number here. When I went slightly less conservative here, and I said, okay, what happens if we just go to where we were last cycle, just the ratio of where we were last cycle? So we got to between 22,250, and that's all I said was, that is if the ETH BTC ratio goes to the same level as it was, which is this level over here, we're going to get to a cycle high of 22,000. So you can see I verified with both models. My minimum prediction is 11,000. Sorry, let me just undo that. My minimum prediction is 11,000. My more realistic prediction is about 18,000, and my highest prediction is about 23,000. So that's pretty much the range. Then I did the same thing for Solana, right? I said, okay, look, let's actually just for 1 second, let's go to Solana. Let's actually undo all the Solana cells, and you can see the valuation. As I said, look, what is the SOL dominance today? And again, I just went to the charts. I went to SOL.D, which shows me the SOL dominance here. Now, this is a little bit more tricky because SOL is not on a fully diluted basis, but you'll see that I've actually accounted for that. So I've said the Solana dominance today is 112 billion over a $3.8 trillion market cap. That gives me a SOL dominance of 2.95%, which is very similar to the charts. What is the SOL price today? Well, it's $190. What is the FDV today? Solana's FDV. You can see that it's $110 billion, right? That is the number. So I've got the dominance, I've got the price, and I've got the thing. And then I say, look, conservatively, if Solana is currently on 2.95%, where is it going to get to? What's the dominance going to get to at the end of the cycle? Now, you can see that this one is slightly different because the dominance is actually on a higher high. So there's a lower high in the last cycle. In this cycle, we're making a higher high. So what I said was, what if we just get to more or less the same level? Like let's say we've hit the cycle top for Solana dominance. That is more or less where I put the number. And I said, okay, in a very conservative, we just get to where we were in the beginning of the cycle, which is here, it's actually 3.93. Okay, 3.93. The Solana market cap will be 3.93 times the $12.5 trillion. Right, so it's going to be Solana's dominance times the closing market cap of the whole market. And if that's the case, the SOL market cap should be $490 billion, which is exactly actually where ETH is right now, right? So it's almost like you're saying that Solana will get to where ETH is right now at the end of the cycle. Cool. If that happens, what's the multiple? Well, it's 4.38 because I took the 490 million and I divided it by where we're at today. That means that there's going to be a 4.38x price move. And so I think that conservatively, Solana gets to $831 in the cycle if Bitcoin gets to $250 and the Bitcoin dominance drops as we predicted. Okay, but then I said, look, that's very conservative. Why did I say it's conservative? Because that would mean that we've already hit the top of Solana dominance. Now, that could be the case. But I wanted to mess around and say, what if it's not the case? What if we actually put in a higher high? And so we went from 2.8 to 3.8, and then maybe we just went to 4.8 at the top of the cycle. So I said, all right, at 4.8%, if the market cap is going to be 12.5 trillion, what is going to be the value of Solana? And I got to a number of $600 billion. If Solana goes to $600 billion and it's currently at $112 billion, there's a multiplier of 5.36, which means that you take the Solana price now, times it by 5.36, and that would give you a realistic end of cycle, a realistic price of $1,018 for Solana at the end of the cycle. Again, what I wanted to do was I wanted to test this. So I went back and I looked at the SOL BTC pair. And I said, I just want to look at the trend of SOL versus BTC and just see what happens if we just follow the SOL BTC trend. Now that's the SOL BTC chart, as you can see. And you can see that towards the top of the cycle, we always hit this trend line over here. And so I just extrapolated and I said, well, what if we just carry on doing that and we just touch the line somewhere around here? Okay, cool. Let's just see what happens. So currently the price of Solana is $190. The current SOL BTC ratio is 15478. It was a little bit lower, so 154. Let's be a little bit more scientific. How's that? 15478. 15478. Okay. The last cycle high, if I look at the last cycle high, which is this part over here, it was 0.0046. Here, 0.0046. The Bitcoin prediction at the end of the cycle is $250. So based on a very conservative trend, now if I say very conservative, if we just get to this level over here, I've assumed that Solana SOL BTC will be at 0.02346. Okay? In other words, one SOL will buy you 0.002 Bitcoin. If you take that conservatively and you multiply that by the price of Bitcoin at the end of the cycle, you get a Solana at 587 in the most conservative scenario. How did that compare with our conservative number over here? Well, it was a bit lower than the conservative number over here. But watch this. This is where it got a little bit interesting. When I took that number and I said, okay, well, let's look at a realistic number. And I didn't want to go too crazy. I didn't want to go like all the way back to where we were last cycle, because there was FTX last cycle, and there were people manipulating prices last cycle. And I kind of think that's not going to happen this cycle. So I just went to like here. And I said, if that ratio gets to 0.0035, in other words, one Solana buys you 0.035 Bitcoin, what is the realistic price for Solana? And what I got was $875. And then lastly, what I did was I said, okay, what if we actually get to, okay, no, actually, in fact, let's leave it at that. Let's leave it at that, because I'll show you this one in a couple of seconds. I want to leave that till the end. So what you can see is that we've got price targets realistically hovering around between $800 and $1,000 for Solana. Anyway, I then did the same thing for BNB, right? And this one blew my mind. And I think that the last one, 𝗬𝗎, will absolutely blow your mind. So I said, look, what is the BNB dominance today? BNB.D. That's the BNB dominance. It'll come up in a second. When I looked earlier, it was 2.58%. The BNB price today was $830 million. The market cap was $116 billion. That's all data that you can get over here on CoinGecko, if you want to look at it. So you've got the market cap. Let's just quickly refresh that. So you've got the market cap at 114 billion. That's a fully diluted market cap. Price slightly down. So price is slightly down, as you can see. Okay. Then I said, okay, look, what is the dominance going to be? I see this, it's really stalling today. Let's see if we can try and fix that. Let's try and fix that. Okay, there we go. That should work. Okay, so that's the BNB dominance. Right now it's 2.95. And I said, okay, look, where do I believe this is going to get to? And I drew that magic trend line of ours. And when I did, I said, okay, well, what if the BNB dominance just gets to, let's just say 5%? In other words, all we're saying is that BNB will go up to somewhere here, which is somewhere between last cycle and this cycle. That is where the dominance will actually go up to. Now, in the event that it actually does that, okay, the market cap of BNB will be $625 billion, which is 5.39 times where it is today. And that would give you a $4,400 target on BNB. Now, I can be more conservative. I can say, look, maybe it's just 4%. Maybe the dominance will get to 4%. That still gives me $3,500 for BNB, which is currently trading at $830. Then I said, okay, let's maybe go a little bit, let's have some fun. And let's say that BNB dominance goes all the way up to this level over here. Somehow we keep up this upward trend, which is, I think, pretty logical to say like this upward trend will continue. If it does, let's just say we get to 8% on BNB, or 8. I mean, I said 8.5, but we can reduce it to 8. At 8% dominance, it gives BNB a market capitalization of $1 trillion, which is 8 times where it is today, 8.62 times where it is today. And that would give us a price of $7,155 at the end of the cycle for BNB. Now, again, you can mess around with these forecasts, But I think that people are saying I'm delusional. You know, you think it's delusional, but then you look at the price, and the price kind of says to you, like, you haven't put in, you've got a higher high here, you've got a lower high, you've got a higher high here. Here you had a lower low, but you can actually continue to go up, right? So I'm just showing you what the charts are actually showing me. And if you think that my prices are delusional, take the spreadsheet, mess around with the spreadsheets, you'll see it for yourself. Now I want to show you how I got to a realistic price on 𝗬𝗏 of $25. Okay, I know it sounds really high, but just work with me on the math. So 𝗬𝗏's fully diluted market cap is 1.05. Okay, now I had to work that out manually because the chart on TradingView doesn't work it out on fully diluted valuations. And I wanted to work it out on a fully diluted valuation. So the chart on the market cap shows the market cap at 0.35, but that doesn't take into account the fully diluted valuation. I wanted to use fully diluted valuation. The price of 𝗬𝗏 today, around $4. And the market cap of 𝗬𝗏 today, as per CoinGecko, is let's have a look here. I think it's $40 billion, I think it is. So it is $40 billion. That's the fully diluted market cap on 𝗬𝗏 today, $40 billion. Now, I said, look, what if it, I mean, look how conservative it was. I said, look, if it just goes from 1.05 to 1.25 in terms of an increase in dominance. Now, just to give you a perspective of how conservative that scenario would be, it would mean that you just go from here back to here. Like, that's all it is. Doesn't sound right. Not when your chart looks something like that. But let's just do it for being conservative. At a 1.25 times what I think the market cap will be at the end of the cycle, that gives 𝗬𝗏 a market cap of $156 billion, which is about 3.91 where it is today, which takes us to $16. Then I wanted to be a little bit more generous. And I said, well, what if the market cap actually doubles? So let's just be a little bit more scientific and say the dominance actually doubles. And then 𝗬𝗏 gets to a market cap of $275 billion, which is half of where ETH is today, right? At the end of the cycle. Well, then there's a 6.8 multiple. And that would take the 𝗬𝗏 price to $28. So it's 6.8 times 4. That would take the 𝗬𝗏 price to $28. So as I say, I'm not a big fan of price predictions, but I do like looking at scenarios and I do like looking at the maths. I'm going to make this spreadsheet public for you guys, and then you guys can mess with certain assumptions. So the first assumption that I'd mess with, and I'll highlight them for you in pink or in green, is I'd mess with that assumption. And then you could mess with where you think the Bitcoin dominance is going to be. And then the rest will basically spit out what the market caps will be. So let me just give an example. If you are more conservative than me and you believe that Bitcoin will get to 200,000, which is not a long way from here, 200,000, and you believe that Bitcoin dominance will be higher, it'll be 45%, which is again much more conservative than me. Hold on, what did I do here? Okay, 45%, which is much more conservative than me. Then you expect the market cap to get to about $8 trillion at the end of the cycle. Okay, that's about a 1x from here. I think that's very conservative. Well, on these numbers, and again, you can mess with that. You can mess with this number over here, which is the ETH dominance at the end of the cycle. You can mess with the ETH dominance at the end of the cycle in the realistic. So I'm highlighting all the ones in green that you can actually mess with. The rest is all data, is actually all data. The rest you can actually play with. Same thing with Solana. So you can mess with that and you can mess with that. You can change the dominance. You can, based on your own charts, you can take a chart and you can say, okay, well, I don't think that runs right here. I think, as someone said in the chat, he is delusional. I've been called delusional before. Usually it's ex-girlfriends that call me delusional, but it's okay. So if that happens, I mean, this charts are very slow today, but if that actually happens, then Solana actually can get to 724,000. Now again, my base case, Bitcoin gets to 250,000 this cycle. My base case is that Bitcoin has a market dominance of 40%. Actually, my more realistic case is that this actually goes down to 35%. And if that does go to 35%, ETH gets to $26,000. Solana gets to 1,163. Is that right? Yeah, Solana gets to $1,163, which is about 6 times where it is today. Why does this number look so low? It is 4.8%. Okay, yeah, the increase isn't very big. BNB will get to $8,000 and 𝗬𝗎 will get to $31. So again, you can mess with this number. You can mess, in fact, with every single one of these numbers that are highlighted in green, and you can get to your own. If you want to double check it on the ETH Bitcoin, on the Bitcoin pair, you can use these models over here and they'll help you double check it. Now, again, as I say, not a big fan of price predictions. I did it to show you guys how aggressive this bull market can be. In both the bull markets that I've been around in crypto, I've been caught off guard on both. The reason I was caught off guard on both is because I just couldn't believe that anything could go up as quickly as crypto did. And then it did, and I was caught completely off guard. Most of my positions are sold, and then I started FOMOing back in. The idea behind this is to just give you some kind of perspective as to what happens if, and to actually base it on a thing. You say someone's asking for an XRP price prediction. Should I do one quickly? Should we do an XRP one? Okay, so you tell me in the chat if we should do an XRP one. In the meantime, let's quickly check in on our bots. So remember yesterday I was trying to put $50,000 into the ETH bot. I managed to put $50,000. There was a setting that you couldn't put in more than $10,000. You can see that the 𝗕𝗂𝗪 bot, which I put in $45,000 at the end of the month, has now given me $55,000, got 24% return. And the more aggressive ETH bot, which is the 𝗕𝗂𝗛𝗪 bot, I put in $50,000 yesterday, and I've got 51,726. So it's done 3.45% today. This is going to be a much more aggressive bot, right? I'll do the XRP one because I see there's a lot of people asking. I'll do the XRP one. If you want to follow the bots, guys, you know what to do. You go to the show over here. So you go to the show over here. You have to sign up with this link over here. Otherwise, it won't let you follow the bot. And then choose which bot you want to follow and allocate the money to it. You can obviously unfollow whenever you want. You're in control of the account, not actually us, right? Yeah, so that is how the bots are doing. Remember, there are only 200 places on this ETH bot. So it's selling out pretty fast. Yesterday, let's quickly look here, because yesterday there was like 50 places left or something, I think. Let's quickly just have a look. So, wow, is this internet like really slow? Okay, there's about 60 places left. Yeah, wow, look at this. It's already returned 6% in 2 days. 6% in 2 days in a sideways market. That's unbelievable. Actually, I wonder if I refresh the screen, whether I've made more money. Let's have a look. Probably yes. Logically, you'd say I should have made more money. This internet is painfully slow, right? Yours is good. Maybe I'm on the wrong internet. Maybe something's wrong with my computer. Anyway, while that is refreshing, I see that everybody's saying, do XRP, do XRP, do XRP. All right, so cool. Let's do it. Let's actually do it on XRP. So I'm just going to copy this and I'm going to paste it over here and I'm going to do an XRP thing. Okay, let's start off with the XRP dominance today. I must say, I've never looked at XRP dominance. I don't even know if they actually do an XRP dominance. I hope so. XRP.D. Yes, there is an XRP dominance. What do you know? Okay, so the XRP dominance today is 4.84%. 4.84%. The price of XRP today is, let's have a look. Let's just open another chart because I'm scared if we start opening that chart. Okay, the price of XRP today is $3.14. So I'm going to put it in here. $3.14. 3.14. And the market cap of XRP today, which I'm going to get from here, is XRP. The market cap of XRP today is 180. It's actually $314 billion. So we have to go back here and say $314 billion. 314. And this here is going to be slightly different because we have to take the market cap today divided by the total market cap, and that will give us, it's actually 8% because it's not fully diluted. All right, now let's talk about the end of the cycle. Where do we see the XRP dominance going at the end of the cycle? So I like pulling out charts here for this and just kind of like seeing what the levels are on the charts. Now this chart's a massive cup and handle, you can see. So I reckon this could break out and probably get to, let's say conservatively, should we say 7? and then and 9. Let's just say 7 and 8. Let's just say 7 and 8%. Okay, but okay, on 7 and 8% is slightly, that would make it, you've always got to double it. So you've got to say it's about 15%. Why? Because we've got to use fully diluted valuation. So let's say that it goes to from 8 to, let's say it goes from 8 to 12% market dominance. So what would that give us? It would give us hold on a second, let's just have a look here. That would give us a price prediction of, or multiply. What would be the multiplier? So the market cap at the end of the cycle would be 12% of this number over here, which would be our total market cap. Okay, let's go back to 40% here. Let's just make that 40% again, just so we can keep our numbers thingy. And okay, so if we got XRP at 12%, it's got a $1.5 trillion market cap. I think that's very, very high. Let's just say it stays the same, just for shits and giggles. 8% makes it a $1 trillion asset, which gives it a 3 multiple from here, which means you get an XRP at $12, at $10, sorry, at $10. So you can do it, you can mess around. Obviously for each token, it's going to be different, but that could give you I mean, it's not really difficult to believe that XRP would triple from here to the end of the cycle. What is difficult to believe is that it would become a $1 trillion asset, which would be bigger than, well, what would ETH be? ETH would be a $2 trillion asset. Okay, that could actually happen. That could actually happen. Let's just do another one just for fun. That's so conservatively. Let's say on a less conservative basis, what would the market cap of XRP be? It'll be that times the 12. It'll make it $1.5 trillion, which would give it a between. So you're looking at between $10 and $15 if Bitcoin gets to 250, and if all these predictions actually happen. So anyway, that is the predictions. That is the predictions. That is, I'm going to make the spreadsheet available to all of you. I don't want you guys messing with the spreadsheet while I'm on the show. Now, once I'm off the show, I'll leave a link for you guys below. Also, remember, guys, if you want to follow portfolios, if you're not comfortable trading yourself for the rest of the cycle, and you just want to copy trade portfolios, but actually still keep your money in your account, right? I've set up a whole lot of model portfolios, and you can see that they set up a meme coin portfolio and an ETH bull portfolio and a Solana bull portfolio and a Coinbase top 50 portfolio. You can go and have a look, and you can copy trade all these portfolios for free, right? You have to use this link over here, and you have to use CryptoMan Run. It's case sensitive to get this for free on Botsfolio. But you can literally copy my portfolios for free with your own money. We never take your money. It's managed by a bot that actually trades for you. Alrighty, let me know what you think of my price predictions. Let me know if you think they're too conservative or whether they're right. Also, the spreadsheet will be available for you. Let me know what you got when you tried the price predictions. I'll see you guys again tomorrow. Till then, trade well, my friends.